Welcome, curious minds, to another deep dive into the world of cybersecurity. We're about to pop the hood on a topic that might not always grab the headlines, but is absolutely critical for your digital defenses: secure maintenance.
That's right. This is the deep dive where we take complex information, unpack it, and give you the essential nuggets you need to be truly well-informed, often with some surprising facts along the way.
Think of us as your expert guides, helping you understand what truly matters in the sources you've shared with us.
And today, our mission is, well, pretty clear.
We're dissecting the maintenance family of controls from a really important document, the NIST Special Publication 800-171 Revision 3 Final Public Draft.
Yep. Our goal is to explore what it truly means to keep your systems secure, even when they're being serviced.
And crucially, why these practices are non-negotiable for any non-federal organization handling sensitive information.
Exactly. And for you, our listener, if your organization deals with controlled unclassified information or CUI, that's, any unclassified information that still needs specific safeguarding by law or policy.
Then understanding these maintenance controls isn't just good practice.
No, it's really a foundational security requirement. Missing these steps can open the door to compromises that directly impact the federal government's ability to conduct its essential missions.
Wow, so we're talking about protecting the integrity of national operations, even when that data is outside federal hands.
Precisely. It's that serious.
Okay, let's unpack this. Before we dive into the specifics of maintenance, it's crucial to understand the bedrock document itself. NIST SP 800-171 Revision 3. What exactly is this publication? Why is it so fundamental?
Okay, so the NIST Special Publication 800-171 Revision 3 Final Public Draft, quite a mouthful.
Yeah.
It was released in November 2023, and it comes from the National Institute of Standards and Technology, NIST.
Right, NIST. We hear that acronym a lot.
You do. Think of NIST as the U.S. government's principal authority for developing cutting-edge standards and guidelines, especially for information security. They're basically setting the blueprint for how data should be protected.
So it's a guideline, but what's its specific purpose? Especially for, say, non-federal organizations, like a defense contractor or maybe a university research lab.
Okay, its primary purpose is to provide federal agencies with the recommended security requirements.
Recommended.
Well, recommended for the agencies to put into contracts. They need these requirements for protecting the confidentiality of controlled unclassified information, CUI, when that information is living in non-federal systems and organizations.
Okay, that's a critical distinction. Non-federal systems.
Absolutely. It means if you're a contractor, a researcher, an academic institution, or really any private entity working with the federal government's unclassified but sensitive data, this document is essentially your roadmap, your rule book.
The rule book for how to protect that data.
Yes. And it applies to any component of your non-federal systems that processes, stores, or transmits CUI, or even systems that just provide protection for those CUI handling systems.
So it casts a wide net.
It does. And it's explicitly intended for federal agencies to use in, contractual vehicles or other agreements they set up with non-federal organizations.
Which means it becomes a compliance necessity, right? Not just a suggestion.
Exactly. It's not just a nice to have. If you're working with CUI, you have to adhere to this. It's like the government is saying, look, we trust you with our sensitive, unclassified data.
But you need to protect it with the same rigor we would.
Precisely. Because its compromise could affect us directly. Can you elaborate on that? Why? What are the real-world implications if CUI isn't protected at this level by non-federal partners?
Yeah, what's the actual risk?
Well, the why is truly paramount. Protecting CUI directly impacts the federal government's ability to successfully conduct its essential missions and functions.
Okay, give me an example.
Sure. Consider a scenario where a contractor develops critical components for, say, a new defense system. The designs, while unclassified, contain sensitive technical specifications. That's CUI.
Got it. Sensitive, but not top secret.
Right. Now, if that information is compromised because of inadequate security at the contractor's facility, it could let adversaries gain insights into our tech advancements.
Which could compromise national security or give them a strategic edge.
Exactly. The federal government's responsibility to protect CUI doesn't just vanish because it's shared with an external company.
So a consistent and robust level of protection is needed no matter who holds the data. It's like extending the government's security fence around its partners.
That's a great way to put it. It's about maintaining a consistent security posture across the entire ecosystem, absolutely critical for national security, even for information that isn't classified at the highest level.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. Now, how exactly did NIST arrive at these specific requirements? Did they just, like, brainstorm a list in a room somewhere?
No, not at all. The requirements in NIST SP 800-171 are actually derived from a much broader, more comprehensive set of controls.
Which is?
That would be NIST SP 853. Specifically, they use the moderate baseline from NIST SP 853B.
Okay, 853, that's the big one, right? The master blueprint.
You got it. Think of 853 as the sprawling master plan for federal information systems. It covers everything: availability, integrity, confidentiality, the works.
But 800-171 is smaller, more focused.
Exactly. And that's where the tailoring process comes in. It's actually quite fascinating because it's what makes 800-171 practical for non-federal organizations.
Tailoring, though, they customize it. How do they decide what to keep and what to cut from that huge 853 blueprint? Because, less isn't always more when it comes to security.
You're right. Less isn't always more, but focused is often better. They eliminate controls or parts of controls based on very specific, transparent criteria.
Okay, like what?
Well, first, if a control is mainly the responsibility of the federal government itself, think things like the formal authorization of the federal system or certain federal personnel security aspects.
Something the contractor wouldn't do anyway?
Right. Those get removed from 800-171 because non-federal organizations wouldn't be responsible for them.
Okay, that makes sense. Don't ask a contractor to do something only the government can do. What else?
Second, and this is really crucial, if a control is not directly related to protecting the confidentiality of CUI, it's out.
The confidentiality focus again.
Yes. Remember, 800-171 is laser-focused on confidentiality for CUI in non-federal systems. So controls mainly aimed at ensuring system availability or integrity.
Like making sure the system is always up and running.
Exactly. Those might be excluded if they don't also directly impact confidentiality. Now, this might seem a bit counterintuitive because all aspects of security are important, right?
Yeah, availability matters.
It does, but this keeps the scope manageable and really targeted for that CUI confidentiality mission.
Okay, so if a control's about keeping the lights on, but a failure doesn't necessarily leak sensitive data, it might not be an 800-171. Interesting focus.
Precisely. Third, if a control's outcome or protection capability is adequately addressed by other related controls.
So if another rule already covers it.
Yeah. NIST calls this ORC for other related controls. If that's the case, they consolidate to remove redundancy.
Which avoids making organizations implement the same security practice multiple times under different names.
Smart.
Very smart. It prevents that kind of compliance fatigue. And finally, if a control is just not applicable to the non-federal context or the type of systems typically involved, it's also removed.
That's brilliant. So it's not about being less secure, but about being more focused and efficient on what's absolutely necessary for CUI confidentiality in a non-federal setting and streamlining the requirements.
Yeah, exactly right. That must make compliance significantly easier for organizations. They're not chasing controls that don't apply or are redundant. Saves resources, saves effort.
A focused approach?
Which results in this concise set of security requirements directly applicable to the CUI confidentiality challenge in non-federal environments.
And you mentioned this is a final public draft. What does that status tell us?
It tells us it's gone through a really rigorous multi-stage process that includes extensive public comment periods, so people got to weigh in.
Oh, yeah. Feedback from all sorts of stakeholders, federal agencies, non-federal orgs, industry groups, individual experts. It was all considered and integrated.
So trade-offs were made.
Many trade-offs, definitely. To ensure clarity and conciseness while still meeting those critical security needs, it really shows that this is a living document, constantly evolving based on practical input and the changing threat landscape.
That public engagement seems like a huge strength. It refines the standard to be both robust and actually implementable.
Couldn't agree more.
Okay, that deep dive into the framework itself really helps set the stage beautifully. Now let's pivot to the heart of today's discussion. The maintenance family of controls. That's NIST Section 3.7.
Right.
Now, this family sounds a bit mundane, maybe, like changing the oil in your car.
Yeah.
But you hinted earlier that it's anything but. Why is maintenance so vital to cybersecurity?
It might sound mundane, but honestly, it's critically important. This family specifically focuses on the security controls needed to manage system maintenance.
Like routine patching, hardware repair.
Exactly. Routine patching, hardware repair, software diagnostics, even system upgrades, all that stuff. It's often overlooked or maybe not given the same priority as, say, incident response or access control.
Yeah, those sound more exciting.
They do. But an insecure maintenance process can open up significant backdoors. It can effectively undo all your other security efforts.
So all that hard work on firewalls and access lists could be worthless if maintenance isn't secure.
Potentially, yes. Think of your systems like a high-performance race car. You can have the best driver, the strongest chassis, the most powerful engine.
Okay.
But if your pit crew isn't following strict protocols, if their tools are faulty, or if unauthorized people are touching the vehicle, the entire race and your security is at risk.
That's a fantastic analogy. The pit crew needs to be secure too.
Absolutely. It's a
Right.
classic case of an attacker finding the weakest link. And maintenance often presents that golden opportunity if you're not careful.
It really crystallizes the point that the very act of fixing or improving your system shouldn't introduce new vulnerabilities. Okay, let's break down the core active maintenance requirements in detail, as laid out in NIST 800-171 Revision 3. What's the first control we need to get our heads around?
Okay, the first crucial control we'll discuss is maintenance tools. That's NIST 3.7.4.
Maintenance tools.
Yeah.
Okay, like the actual wrenches and diagnostic software.
Exactly. The core idea here is, well, just like a surgeon needs sterile tools for an operation.
Right, you wouldn't want them using a rusty, contaminated scalpel.
Precisely. It makes perfect sense that your IT team or any external vendor coming in needs secure, clean tools for system maintenance. This control is all about preventing the tools themselves from becoming a security risk.
But what exactly are the key actions required here? What does clean tools look like in a digital sense? Is it just running antivirus?
It's more than just antivirus, though that's part of it. The document specifies several key actions. First, all hardware and software maintenance tools must be formally approved, controlled, and monitored before use.
Formally approved, so not just whatever the tech happens to have in their bag.
Definitely not. This isn't just a suggestion, it's a formal, documented process. For an organization, this means keeping a robust inventory of all approved diagnostic software, USB drives, external hard drives, network analysis tools, even specialized hardware devices.
Like a list of safe tools.
Exactly. Each tool should have an owner, a defined purpose, a life cycle. It helps prevent those shadow IT tools from creeping into your environment and ensures only authorized, known tools interact with sensitive systems.
So that random USB stick someone found in a drawer, even if it has a useful diagnostic program, no go.
Absolutely no go. That's a common pitfall and precisely what this aims to prevent.
Okay, what's next for tools?
Which leads to the second key action. Tools must be inspected for improper or unauthorized modifications. This is critical.
Inspected how?
This includes checking any physical media like those USB drives, diagnostic disks, or even modern cloud-based tools that might download scripts locally. Checking them for malicious code before they touch your system.
So, pre-flight checks.
You got it. This step is a primary defense against introducing malware, whether intentionally or unintentionally. For example, before a technician uses a diagnostic laptop, it should undergo integrity checks, its software scanned for vulnerabilities, its connections validated.
And you said it's more than just antivirus?
Yeah, it's about deep inspection. Maybe using sandboxing environments or hash validation against known good configurations to make sure the tool itself hasn't been tampered with.
Because the tool itself could be compromised, like a supply chain attack, but on the tools you use.
Exactly. Imagine a contractor's diagnostic laptop that got unknowingly infected with ransomware, and then they plug it into your network. This control aims to stop that right at the source. It's a huge vector, especially with sophisticated supply chain attacks becoming more common. If the tool is compromised, all your other defenses could potentially be bypassed.
Scary stuff. Okay, what about after the maintenance? Especially if the equipment might have touched CUI. That sounds like a data leakage nightmare.
It absolutely can be. And that's where the third part of this control comes in, focusing on preventing CUI spills.
Steel pills. All right.
If maintenance equipment, whether it's a diagnostic laptop, a temporary hard drive, maybe even a network tap, might have touched or contained CUI, you must prevent its unauthorized removal from your facility.
Prevent it from leaving the building with CUI on it. How?
NIST lays out 3 specific ways. First, verifying that no ECUI remains on the equipment.
And just hitting delete isn't enough.
Definitely not. This often involves detailed data forensics or using certified wiping processes to ensure the data is truly gone, not just hidden. It needs to be forensically clean.
Okay, verify it's clean. What if CUI was on it?
Then second, if CUI was present and verified, you must sanitize or destroy the equipment.
Sanitize or destroy, like physically.
Sanitization techniques, defined in NIST SP 888, are methods that render data unrecoverable. Think cryptographic erasure for encrypted drives, or purging for non-volatile memory. Destruction is the ultimate step physically breaking down the media beyond recovery, often done for hard drives or SSDs that held really sensitive CUI.
Okay, but what if you can't sanitize or destroy it? Maybe it's proprietary equipment you have to return to the vendor.
Good question. Then the third option applies. You must retain the equipment within your facility. It simply cannot leave.
Wow. Keep it locked up.
It's the last resort to ensure CUI doesn't inadvertently walk out the door. The NIST discussions really highlight that diagnostic and test programs are prime vectors for malicious code. A simple, unverified USB stick could introduce a devastating threat.
So this control ensures the fix doesn't become the problem itself.
Exactly. It's about diligence, preventing supply chain risks at the micro level of your own tools. It's recognizing that maintenance tools can become micro supply chain attack vectors right inside your own walls.
An attacker doesn't need to breach your perimeter if they can compromise the trusted diagnostic tool your own engineer uses daily. That's a sobering thought.
It really is.
Okay, that's a truly comprehensive approach for tools. Really drives home the caution needed. Now, let's move to the next important control. Nonlocal maintenance, NIST 3.7.5. This sounds like it's about remote access, which is, well, exploded recently.
You're spot on. This control deals with situations where technicians or vendors aren't physically on site. They're connecting remotely to do maintenance or diagnostics.
Which happens all the time now.
All the time. Given the prevalence of remote work, global IT support, managed services, this is a particularly significant area of vulnerability for almost every organization. Think about it. Many of the major breaches we hear about start with compromised remote access credentials.
I can absolutely see why. Remote access is incredibly convenient, right? Speed, flexibility.
Huge benefit.
But it also opens up your network to external connections, potentially from untrusted environments. So what are the specific requirements here? What layers of protection are needed for these non-local connections?
There are three main requirements here, kind of building a robust defense around remote maintenance. First, any non-local, meaning remote maintenance and diagnostic activities, must be formally approved and continuously monitored.
Continuously monitored, not just approved once.
Right. This isn't a simple one-and-done approval for remote access. It's ongoing oversight, making sure the remote session is legitimate, stays within its authorized scope, adheres to strict time limits.
How do you do that?
Well, often involves specific VPNs, maybe jump boxes, dedicated logging to track every single action taken during that remote session.
So you need to know exactly who's connecting, when, why, and then keep an incredibly close eye on them the whole time? Sounds like active surveillance.
Pretty much, yeah. Second, and this is a critical barrier, when establishing these non-local maintenance sessions, organizations must implement multi-factor authentication and replay resistance.
Okay, MFA, multi-factor authentication. That seems pretty standard now, thankfully. Using like a password and a code from your phone.
Exactly. Something you know, like a password, something you have like a token or phone app, maybe something you are like a fingerprint. It requires 2 or more different types. This drastically reduces the risk of just stolen passwords leading to a breach.
Okay, MFA check. But what about replay resistance? That sounds like stopping someone from just recording a login and playing it back later. How does that work?
That's precisely what it is. Replay resistance makes it impractical for an attacker to successfully authenticate by just recording and replaying previous authentication messages.
Like copying the key.
Kind of. Think of it like a lock that uses a different key every single time you open it. Even if someone records you opening it, their recording of the old key is useless next time.
Okay. How is that done digitally?
Often using one-time challenges, like those constantly changing codes from an authenticator app, or time-synchronous tokens. Without replay resistance, even strong MFA could be vulnerable if an attacker intercepts and reuses a valid session token. That can happen through things like session hijacking.
Wow. That's a crucial detail.
Yeah.
I bet many organizations might miss that when just focusing on MFA setup. It's an often overlooked but critical part of truly secure remote access.
It really is.
And once the work is done,
Yeah.
you don't just leave the connection open, right? You don't leave the garage door open.
Absolutely not. That's the third requirement. All non-local maintenance sessions and network connections must be terminated as soon as the maintenance is completed.
Shut it down immediately.
Immediately. No lingering open connections, no forgotten back doors, no persistent VPN tunnels left active. This is about ensuring that access window is only open for as long as absolutely necessary, and then it's slammed shut, preferably automatically.
Makes sense. The why this matters here is pretty clear.
Yeah.
Remote access is a huge vulnerability.
Huge. These controls make sure only authorized individuals connect, their identities are strongly verified, the connection itself is protected from eavesdropping or tampering.
And you close the door behind them every single time.
Every single time. It ties directly into other NIST controls around authentication, like 3.5.1, ensuring robust identity verification, and the principle of least privilege access only when needed for the minimum time.
Okay, that makes perfect sense. It's like ensuring a remote-controlled robot working on your car leaves the garage and the door is locked securely afterward. Finally, let's talk about maintenance personnel, NIST 3.7.6. This seems to be about the human element, often the most vulnerable part.
Indeed. This control focuses squarely on knowing exactly who's performing maintenance and what their authorization level is. This is especially critical when external individuals are involved.
So accountability and trust.
Right. And when trust isn't fully established, it's about rigorous oversight. Even trusted internal staff can be socially engineered, or their temporary access could be exploited. So this control recognizes that the human element, even when vetted, remains a significant attack surface needing constant vigilance and clear boundaries.
So it's not just about the tools they use or how they connect, but their identity and trustworthiness. Can you ever really assure trustworthiness? Or is this more about managing the risk associated with people having access?
That's a very perceptive question. It's primarily about managing risk. The first key action here is to establish a clear process for authorizing all maintenance personnel.
Meaning formal vetting, background checks.
Exactly. Formal vetting, approval for anyone who will interact with your systems for maintenance. This process should include background checks appropriate to the CUI's sensitivity, security awareness training, and clearly defined roles and responsibilities.
Okay, authorize them. What's next?
Second, you must maintain an up-to-date list of authorized maintenance organizations or individual personnel.
An approved list of people or companies.
Yes. This gives you a clear, auditable record of who is allowed to perform work, when, and under what conditions. It's fundamental for accountability. If someone shows up claiming to be from vendor X, you can check the list.
Okay, so you verify them against the list.
Yeah.
But what if they don't normally have access to the sensitive info on the system, like a third-party hardware tech replacing a power supply on a server that happens to hold CUI? You can't just let them wander around, can you?
Absolutely not. And NIST accounts for this very common scenario really well. For personnel performing maintenance without an escort, you have to verify that they possess the required access authorizations for the system and the information they might encounter.
So they already need the right clearances, training, permissions to handle CUI on their own.
Correct. This usually applies to your own cleared or authorized internal staff.
But what about that more common scenario? The external hardware repair person comes in, they don't have CUI clearance, maybe not even broad network access. What's the rule then?
That's where the critical supervisor requirement kicks in. For personnel who do not possess the required access authorizations, like that external hardware tech from the vendor, you must designate organizational personnel who do have the required access authorizations and the necessary technical competence to supervise their activities.
Supervise them. Like an escort?
Yes, but an active escort. This supervisor acts as both an escort and a knowledgeable overseer. They aren't just standing there passively watching.
Well, yeah.
They actively ensure the uncleared person only accesses what they absolutely need to, doesn't inadvertently or maliciously expose CUI, and that their actions stay strictly within the scope of the maintenance task. And crucially, that supervisor needs to understand the technical implications of what's being done.
So the supervisor isn't just a warm body watching TV in the corner. They actually understand the tech stuff happening and can step in if needed, preventing accidental leaks or even intentional bad acts.
That's the idea. It's a critical distinction. You're essentially creating a temporary bubble of trust and oversight around that specific maintenance activity.
A supervised bubble.
Okay. And this also applies if you have to issue temporary credentials for, say, urgent ad hoc maintenance by external people.
Which happens.
It does. Those temporary credentials need to be based on a thorough risk assessment, grant the absolute minimum privileges needed, least privilege, and be active for very limited time periods.
Makes sense. So, why this matters for maintenance personnel is basically preventing unauthorized individuals from getting access to sensitive systems or CUI.
Exactly. It's about ensuring that if someone is working on your system, you either have full confidence in their trustworthiness and pre-existing authorization, or, failing that, you maintain full oversight and accountability.
Because without it, even a seemingly harmless hardware fix could turn into an espionage or data theft incident.
Precisely.
Okay, that gives us a really solid understanding of the active critical maintenance controls. In NIST 800-171 Revision 3, we've covered 3.7.4 maintenance tools, 3.7.5 non-local maintenance, and 3.7.6 maintenance personnel. But you mentioned earlier this is Revision 3,
Yeah.
implying changes.
Right.
You talked about the tailoring process, but for organizations used to older versions, they might be wondering, hey, what happened to the old rules?
Yeah.
How has NIST refined these maintenance controls? What got updated, removed, consolidated, and maybe more importantly, why?
Yeah, this is where understanding the evolution of the standard gets really insightful. It gives you transparency into the thinking behind these updates. NIST 800-171 is, as we said, continuously refined.
It's a living document.
It is.
Mm.
Revision 3, being a final public draft, includes a change log and tailoring criteria right in its appendices. They explicitly explain how and why requirements have been updated or removed.
Oh, that's helpful.
Very helpful. It provides important context for understanding how best practices evolve and helps organizations adapt their security programs. It's not just a new version dropped out of the sky. It's a statement about what's most effective and efficient based on feedback and experience.
So if an organization was used to certain controls in Revision 2, they can literally look up why they're different in Revision 3. That level of detail must be incredibly useful for compliance teams.
It really is. Let's look at some specific examples from this maintenance family. You might recall NIST 3.7.1, Controlled Maintenance, from older versions.
Vaguely, yeah. Controlled maintenance.
Well, in Revision 3, 3.7.1 is explicitly listed as withdrawn.
Withdrawn. Why?
Its underlying NIST SP 853 control, which is MA02, Controlled Maintenance, was recategorized as NCO.
NCO, meaning?
Not directly related to protecting the confidentiality of CUI. So while having controlled maintenance processes is generally important for overall system health, integrity, availability.
They're probably covered by general security policies anyway.
Exactly. NIST 800-171 Revision 3 really tightens its focus strictly on what directly impacts CUI confidentiality. So if the control wasn't deemed absolutely essential specifically for CUI confidentiality, it was either removed or maybe absorbed into another control.
That's interesting. So it's not that controlled maintenance is bad practice.
Not at all. It's good practice.
But it might be too broad for the specific narrow focus of CUI confidentiality in this particular document. It really highlights the targeted nature of 800-171. Okay, what about other numbers that seem to be missing, like 3.7.2 or 3.7.3?
Great question. NIST 3.7.2, maintenance tools, the old one, and 3.7.3, non-local maintenance, the old one, are also listed as withdrawn in Revision 3.
Withdrawn too. But those concepts seem important. We just talked about tools and non-local maintenance.
Right. And this doesn't mean the concepts vanished or the practices are irrelevant. Instead, their requirements have been incorporated into other, currently active controls, the ones we just discussed in detail.
Ah, consolidation.
Exactly. Specifically, elements of the old 3.7.2 about maintenance tools are now part of the expanded current 3.7.4, our active maintenance tools control, and also parts are covered by 3.7.6, the active maintenance personnel control, which deals with who uses the tools.
Okay, so it's a streamlining effort. Instead of maybe having separate, potentially overlapping controls, they've rolled them together for clarity and efficiency. Seems like a smart move to reduce compliance fatigue.
It is. And similarly, the requirements from the old 3.7.3 non-local maintenance are now largely covered by the newly enhanced 3.7.5, our current non-local maintenance control.
Makes sense.
And actually, even some elements touch on 3.8.3, which is media sanitization in the next family, media protection, because that deals with wiping CUI off media before it leaves.
So it shows this concerted effort towards streamlining and consolidating requirements in the new revision, making it less redundant, clearer for non-federal orgs to implement.
Absolutely. The public comment process for Revision 3 saw a lot of feedback asking for exactly this kind of simplification where conceptually similar practices were brought under a single, more robust control.
Okay. And was there an older 3.7.6 that was also withdrawn? I seem to recall something about timely maintenance.
You're right to remember that. While our current 3.7.6 is maintenance personnel, there was an older separate concept of timely maintenance. That corresponded to Control MA06 in the big 853 framework.
Timely maintenance, like patching on time.
Exactly. However, that specific control, MA06, was also deemed NCO within the 800-171 framework.
NCO, again, not directly related to CUI confidentiality.
Correct. So while timely maintenance patching promptly is absolutely crucial for overall system health and general security.
You definitely should still do it.
Oh, absolutely. But it doesn't appear as a dedicated active requirement here in 800-171 because the focus is strictly on CUI confidentiality, not necessarily broader system availability or integrity for this specific standard.
That's a really important distinction. It helps organizations focus their 800-171 efforts precisely where the CUI confidentiality risk lies.
Right.
It doesn't mean you shouldn't do timely maintenance.
Please still do timely maintenance.
It just means it's not a specific compliance item under 800-171 for CUI confidentiality. It's more of an overall good security practice addressed elsewhere.
You got it.
That clarification is really helpful, and it speaks volumes about NIST's commitment to making 800-171 clearer, more focused on CUI confidentiality, less redundant.
Yeah.
It should simplify compliance by consolidating requirements. It's not just adding rules, but optimizing them, making the framework more efficient, more practical.
Right. It's a testament to the iterative nature of cybersecurity standards, always improving with real-world feedback.
So if we connect this back to the bigger picture, these maintenance controls, they aren't just about fixing broken things or applying patches, are they?
No, not at all. They are fundamental, proactive security safeguards. They ensure your systems and the CUI they hold remain protected during and after any servicing. Think of it like putting on your armor before you go into battle, not while you're already under attack.
It's not reactive. It's a proactive security shield. Every interaction with your system, even for seemingly benign things like updating software or troubleshooting hardware,
Can introduce risk if not properly managed.
it's a reminder that security is continuous, pervasive, not a one-time project. It really makes you think about how many different hands might touch your data in a typical year, both internal people and external vendors.
Which raises a really important question for every organization listening. How robust is your process, really, for verifying every single person who touches your systems during maintenance, whether they're physically there or connecting remotely?
And what's the real cost if even one of those interactions isn't perfectly secure?
Exactly. These controls highlight the absolute importance of meticulous planning, formal authorization, continuous verification, and robust oversight in every single aspect of system upkeep. It's about security being baked in, not bolted on later, right down to the person patching the server.
So wrapping up on maintenance, when it comes to keeping your CUI safe, we need to remember these critical things. Rigorous control over your maintenance tools.
Making sure they're clean and approved.
Secure and monitored practices for non-local maintenance.
MFA, replay resistance, shutting down connections.
And strict authorization and supervision of maintenance personnel.
Knowing who's touching what and watching them if needed, these seemingly small details, when implemented diligently, form that unbreakable chain of trust for your systems and the sensitive information they handle.
They really are the unseen heroes of your security posture.
Absolutely. And consider this provocative thought. Imagine the ripple effect if just one single unsecured maintenance session opened the door. Maybe allowed an adversary to steal critical CUI, or worse, plant some malicious code that just lies dormant for months.
Waiting to cause damage later. The cost isn't just financial, is it?
Not at all. It's reputation, legal consequences, potentially national security implications. It's a question that demands continuous vigilance and investment in these processes.
Absolutely. Well, that was a fantastic deep dive into the maintenance family. Next time, we'll continue our journey through the NIST controls, shifting our focus from securing systems during active use to protecting data when it's just sitting there at rest. We'll delve into the media protection family.
Looking forward to it. Until then, stay curious, stay informed.
And most importantly, stay secure.